presents her introductions. An M14 becomes you, Mrs. Foster. Whatever. Did I pique your interest? Your trusty M14. Mrs. Foster presents her introductions. An M14 becomes you, Mrs. Foster. Aperitifs are served. Your trusty M14. This one's tenacious. Said, meet by M14. Said. Pleased to make your acquaintance. Army in the headlights. Said, meet by M14. M14, meet said. Did I pique your interest? An M14 becomes you, Mrs. Foster. Mrs. Foster presents her introductions. Your trusty M14. Aperitifs are served. Perfection. Thanks. Faster. Back. An M14 becomes you, Mrs. Foster. This one's tenacious. And she's back. Aperitifs are served. Said, yep, that's a flesh pound. Mummy, more. Did I pique your interest? An M14 becomes you, Mrs. Foster. Whatever. Aperitifs are served. We have ourselves a scrape. Said, meet by M14. M14, meet said. Did I pique your interest? An M14 becomes you, Mrs. Foster. Aperitifs are served. Your trusty M14. This one's tenacious. Oh, get in! An M14 becomes you, Mrs. Foster. Mrs. Foster presents... That's better. Zed, meet by M14. M14, meet Sarah. This
Gracious.
can't hear. Let's no. Mrs. Foster, thanks, sweetie darling. 14 becomes you, Mrs. Foster. Oh, that's happening! Your trusty M14. Did I peek? Master. Temper. An M14 becomes... Pleased to make your acquaintance. Ah, my ears! Zed. 14. M14, meet Zed. This one's tenacious. An M14 becomes you, Mrs. Foster. These Zeds are cloaked. Your trusty M14. That's out, see it? Apparently herself. An M14. Foster. Did I pique your interest? Zed, meet my M14. M14, meet Zed. Mrs. Foster presents her introductions. No. An M14 becomes you, Mrs. Foster. Pleased to make your acquaintance. This one appears a wee bit tense, Mrs. Foster. Mrs. Foster presents her introductions. Zed, meet my M14. M14, meet Zed. Did I pique your interest? An M14 becomes you, What's that? Mrs. Foster presents her... Temper. Zed, meet by M14. M14, meet Zed. This one's tenacious. Your trusty M14. Mrs. Foster presents her introductions. And she's back. There it is. Z, lead by M14. M14, lead Z. This one's tenacious. Ah, your trusty M14. Aperitifs are served. Z, meet by M14. M14, meet Z. That. Did I pique your interest? An M14 becomes... Pleased to make your acquaintance. Ah, your trusty M14.
An M
14 becomes you, Mrs. Foster. Yep, that's a flush pound. This one's tenacious. This one appears a wee bit vexed, Mrs. Foster. Pleased to make your acquaintance. Come on, Mrs. Foster. Let's no more. Z, lead by M14. M14, lead Z. Aperitifs are served. Ah, your trusty M14. This one's tenacious. An M4... Ah! Did I... Ah! If you want something done right. Ah, your trusty M14. Back. Lead by M14. M14 meets Z. Mrs. Foster presents her introductions. Here! It is close. Now, your trusty M14. Aperitifs are served. Temper. Whatever. Acquaintance. Z, meet by M14. M14, meet Z. This one's tenacious. An M14 becomes you, Mrs. Foster. Mrs. Foster presents her introductions. There. Uh-oh, siren! Now, your trusty M14. one's tenacious. M14 needs said. Aperitifs are served. Mrs. Foster. An M14 becomes you, Mrs. Foster. Did I pique your interest? Now, your trusty M14. That's better. Mrs. Foster, in back. An M14 becomes you, Mrs. Foster. Now, your trusty M14. Presents her introductions. Temper. Did I pique your interest? Said, meet my M14. M14, meet said. Flashbound, see it? Ah, your trusty Master. Mrs. Foster, present. Said, meet my M14. M14, meet said. This one's tenacious. This one appears a wee bit vexed, Mrs. Foster. Yep, that's a bloodhound. Pleased to make your acquaintance. Did I pick your in? An M14 becomes you, Mrs. Foster. Oh, get in! Temper. Just served chilled. Whatever. Aperitifs are served. And she's back. Now, your trusty M14. Pleased to make your acquaintance. Said, meet my M14. Sled. Aperitifs are served. Ah, your trusty M14. Position, heal thyself. That's a flashbang. To make your acquaintance. Says, meet by M14. M14, meet. What? Did I pique your interest? Your trusty M14. Pleased to make your acquaintance. Love no more. Said, meet by M14. Tenacious. Temper, temper. An M14 becomes... And she's back. Pleased to know. This one appears... Foster. Zed, meet by M14. M14, meet Zed. Mrs. Foster presents her introduction. On to Mrs. Foster. This one's tenacious. There it is. Mrs. Foster presents her introduction. Your trusty M14. Aperitifs are served. It's back. Position, heal thyself. Meet by M14. M14, meet Seth. Mrs. Foster presents her introduction. Your trusty M14. This one's tenacious. An M14 becomes you, Mrs. Foster. Did I pique your interest? Whatever. Temper, temper. Say, this one's tenacious. That's better. Did I pique your interest? I'm rather partial to this M14.